In today's episode, I am speaking with Shajeda Ahmed. Shajeda is the Chief People Officer of Black Country Integrated Care Board, otherwise known as ICB. I have been waiting for quite a while to welcome Shajeda back to Bravery in the Boardroom, because if you have been a follower of us, you'll know that she joined us for our International Women's Month special a few years ago on embracing equity in the boardroom. And I really wanted Shajeda to come back. Since then, as I said, she stepped into a very high-profile leadership role. And this is such a profound conversation where Shajeda shares with us about how her upbringing really underpins how she shows up authentically as a senior leader. Some real key messages, not only based from the understanding from the programs that Shajeda pioneered here in the NHS, but also from the perspective of leading through deeply challenging times like it is now in the NHS, and just not to forget your people and how you're leading them. Shajeda also talks about really why your difference, is your USP, and not saying that as a cliche, but how that's brought her success when it has been challenging, and that advice that she wants to give to you if you're listening today as an aspiring underrepresented senior leader who wants to get into the boardroom and hold a similar profile that like she has. I hope you enjoy listening, and I would love to speak to Shajeda again as her journey continues into showing up authentically in the boardroom. Shajeda, how long have I been trying to pin you down to get you onto the podcast?
I have no idea, but I'm sure it's not that long, is it, Monique?
Do you know what? It's been a while, and just for our guests who may not remember, you joined me, a few years ago on a International Women's Month special, and the nuggets and gems that you dropped there, that is why I've been tracking you and trying to find a date when we could welcome you. So welcome to BITV podcast.
Thank you so much, Monique. And can I just say, I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you today. And my apologies for not, being able to make the time to meet with you sooner. So
people will understand why, right? People will understand why when we talk about you. So it'd be great to kick off for those who don't know you to just say a little bit about you and your current role.
Okay, so, gosh, where do I start? I always think it helps if I share a little bit about myself personally, and then I'll move on to the role. So I'm a mum. Mm-hmm. I have two wonderful daughters who are strongly opinionated. I have no idea who they get that trait from, of course. But my eldest daughter, Shania, works in the NHS within the communications department, and my youngest daughter, Sophia, is currently knee-deep in GCSE exams. Mm-hmm. So as you can imagine, the household is very lively at the moment, and that's the word I'll use. I think it's important to share a little about my heritage as well. I'm Bangladeshi. I'm a Muslim in terms of my faith, and I'm one of four siblings. I have an older brother and two younger brothers. So that's who I am. I'm a mum, I'm a sister, a little bit about me. Now, in terms of my professional side, I'm what is known as a CPO in the NHS, so that's a Chief People Officer, which back in the day was called an HR Director.
Yes, it was, yeah.
So clearly the title has evolved over the years. I currently work in the NHS for the Black Country Integrated Care Board, also known as the ICB. And essentially what an ICB does, it sits across a very large geographical patch and supports providers of health and care services to be more integrated in terms of the healthcare services we deliver, but in particular around designing care pathways to meet the needs of our local communities. So if I were to summarise my career, I've always worked within the HR function. It wasn't planned or intentional. I somehow, by stealth, moved into it and found myself to be quite good at it. And so I've always been in the HR profession in the NHS for over the past 25 years. But prior to that, I gained my HR experience within the private sector, primarily within the manufacturing and the retail industry. So that's who I am, and that's what I do, Monique.
Thank you for sharing that. And so long-standing career in the NHS, but it's not the only experience under your belt. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. So I always ask the same first couple of questions to our guests. How would you describe your leadership in 3 words, your leadership style?
Well, you've caught me out there. I'm a bit of a wordsmith. Okay, so if you pin me down to 3 words, I suppose what I would say is that I'm quite driven, although my children or my friends will tell you there's no quite in front of that. So I am very, very driven. I'm outspoken. I have tempered that with age as I've gone older, but actually if I feel very strongly about something, I can be uber outspoken in terms of sharing my thoughts on any given matter. And the last thing I would say in terms of the third point is I'm quirky. You know, you might find this strange.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
I do have a sense of humour. I do believe that, whatever you do, be it personal, professional, you have to enjoy and get satisfaction out of it. So that's probably the third leadership style approach I would have. But if you allow me a few more words, Monique, if I could pull that together in a sentence, what I would say is that with me, you get what you see. I don't think I could do the job that I do if people couldn't read me or get a sense of who I am. So whilst being driven, outspoken or quirky may not be your atypical corporate buzzwords,
yes.
What I would say is I'm someone who tends to speak their mind, so people know exactly, who I am, what I am, and they know there's authenticity in terms of any dialogue they will have with me.
And I think that's so, what you just shared there at the end about being authentic, being a senior leader, being a chief people officer, where you will be, some of the things we're going to talk about, some of the programs that I know you've led over the years, actually that leading by example is so crucial in terms of the integrity of the program, and many colleagues who may look like you and look like me, who seeing an authentic leader of ethnic diversity in a senior role who speaks their mind is extremely powerful. So, and I know that's galvanized some of the changes that you've led over the years. So let the listeners be enlightened, right, about what I know. So it'd be great to understand a bit more about that 25-year history in the NHS. Tell us a little bit more about that journey for you.
So I'm going to start off by saying it's been hard, incredibly hard. I could flower it up, I could moderate that, but I won't because it has been hard, Monique, because it's not been without its challenges. So if I were to compare my career journey, I would probably compare it to a roadmap. But if we embrace all things digital, I would probably compare it to a journey with no GPS or any sat-nav or anything. So can you imagine that? Trying to find your way without Google Maps or Waze or whatever it is that your car sat-nav is. So my career, there was no security blanket attached to it. There was nobody holding my hand and walking me through in terms of next steps. It was about taking many different roads, many twisty lanes. It was stopping, asking for directions. Sometimes people would help you, sometimes they wouldn't. And it was generally a case of just trying to find your way through everything. So it was a difficult road that I've travelled in terms of my career. But if I put the analogies to one side for the moment, and if I'm honest and if I'm being candid, what I would say is that, irrespective of the challenges and the opportunities, because, I'm someone who's also had many, many personal challenges in my life, because it's been so tough, it has made me the person that I am today. I think that has helped me. I'm someone who was born in the 70s. I went to school in the 80s, and discrimination was a constant in terms of both my personal and professional life. And, I can't separate the two because, intrinsically they are linked. And whether that was based on my gender, my faith, my race, or my everyday life, what I would always say to people is I am almost somewhat grateful for those experiences. I'm someone who watched my mum, or as I call her in Bengali, my amma. And for most of her life, she managed a household in a country that was completely unfamiliar to her when she came in the 60s. And we were the first Bangladeshi family in Warsaw. And if I had to compare my mum to a Marvel character, I would say she was Superman. And the reason I say that is because irrespective of the differences that she had to face, I would always describe her as someone who had a steel spine. And to this day, I like to think that I inherited that part of her in terms of spine, in terms of who I am and how I am. My mum's unfortunately passed away. She passed away, quite some time ago. But I remember little things. She'd take us to Walsall Library every Saturday because we loved reading. And my dad would take us to mosque every day from 5 o'clock till 7 to make sure that we learnt our prayers and we learnt the Quran. So, you know, my mum and dad were absolute opposites. My mum was feisty and my dad was a more quieter person. But I think that balance, you know, has probably led to, you know, me being able to deal with adversity in a positive way. And it has helped shape me into succeeding in my career.
So it's really great to hear, and honest, what you said there, you're honest. So really hearing from you about how your parents have really underpinned and instilled, if I could use the word values, isn't it? Some core values in you that you said when you faced adversity in your, you know, in your career journey. But flipping that script, what are some of the things that you'd call out that helped you to progress?
So I'm someone who doesn't get angry often, but when I do, it does galvanize me into taking what I would say certain steps, certain actions. So what really, I suppose, helped me, you know, flip, you know, my thinking at the given time was I had the benefit of having really good directors, a couple of really good directors who helped me see what they saw in me, because sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. You know what you know and you see what you see. And what they did was they encouraged me to actually step outside of myself and say, look, Shajeda, you know, this is what you're missing. This is what you need to be looking at. This is what you need to be exploring.
Yes.
You know, and as people, we can often be our own worst enemy, because sometimes, you know, we just can't, we often block ourselves almost. So I've been fortunate to have some fantastic people, not many, you know, but, you know, 4 or 5 fantastic people in my career who I would say have helped to unlock that thinking. And to this day, there is one thing that I do remember. He was my operations director when I was working in the private sector. And I remember he pulled me to one side and he said, Shajeda, we can't all be rocket scientists. And I remember looking quite critical, thinking, why is he saying that to me? And actually, it did spark something in me, because up to that point, I think I was just trying to be everything to everyone.
Yes.
And because I am competitive by nature, can't help it, and because I was trying to be 100% at everything, you know, what he helped me realise was that there is no such thing as being good at everything. And that you have to sometimes, you know, give yourself a break when it comes to that. And I was 30. I was in my first HR manager role then. And it was almost an epiphany, because until then I'd realised I was on this roller coaster of always trying to do more and more and more. And it helped center me. That one thing that he said to me just centered me. And what I did realise at that point is that, you know, things are not just going to change for me because I want them to change. You know, the world is large and wide. But what I could do was change how I approach things and how I did things.
Yes.
And how I dealt with situations and how I responded to things. Because I think today we call it rewriting our own narrative, don't we, Monique?
Yeah.
But the realisation for me was that I had to change myself in order for things to change and to make things happen for me. And, you know, that gave me an element of control, because sometimes you can almost say, well, this isn't happening because that's not fair.
Yes, yeah.
And, you know, I realised that actually I had to own it and had to look at how I could do things differently. So, you know, my career has been anything but a straight road, you know, to get to where I want to get to. But I've had to, you know, look at changing jobs. You know, I moved around in the private sector, and, you know, that was very much around, you know, taking a leap of faith, having to adapt, having to look at how you can do different things within your career. And, you know, it's a big thing if you leave a job and go to another job, because, you know, we've all got livelihoods, we've all got mortgages. And, you know, that was something that thinking, that flipping of that narrative enabled me to do. It enabled me to have a level of confidence where I knew that if I wanted my career to progress, I would have to leave, get another job, look at building myself and my career up in that job, and then look at moving on again. So, you know, I do always say when things get really tough for me, you know, and I will share this, so everybody get your pens ready, because things do get tough, you know, in life, at work, etc. I always refer back to a hugely influential and insightful book, which I read when I was about 5 or 6, I think. And you're probably thinking, where's she going with this?
I am.
But I'm going to share this with you, because I'll give you an insight into perhaps who I am and why I am. But When I was about 5, I read a book called The Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark by Jill Tomlinson. And the book was about Plop, the barn owl who was afraid of the dark, which of course, was a bit of a, an oddity because owls aren't afraid of the dark. But it was a book that resonated with me because ultimately the story is about Plop overcoming his fears. And, as a child, all I can remember is if Plop can do it, so can I. I can overcome any fears I might have, and I can conquer anything, and I can raise my head above the parapet. So that's my go-to book. You can have all the management consultant books in the world that you want. My book is The Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark.
So boiling it right back down, right? About listening to what you were sharing there, like real straight talking advice there about taking ownership is what I heard from you. Taking ownership of your career, getting ready for the jump. Almost is what I feel like you were saying there, isn't it? Knowing actually I'm going to have to start again, but this is what's going to help me to progress. And so really, as you said, quite simply, you face your fears head on. So that's what I hear from what you shared there. I'd love to hear more about some of those career successes you've had, because I know I met you quite a few years ago now, wasn't it? When you were at Combined Healthcare, and programs after programs coming out from your organisation and your work across the system that you were in as well. But that's all well and good me saying that. I'd love to hear in your words what you see as some of your career highlights so far.
Okay, so I will always be unapologetic about the fact that I advocate equality, diversity, and inclusion. And we all know what the political landscape is at the moment. But I will never apologise for being someone who, advocates that. In terms of my career successes, I'm not very good at showcasing myself, so I'm going to give this a go. But the first thing I'd say is that, I've had the privilege of working with some fantastic people in my career, people who've inspired me. And, for me, that's one of the greatest accomplishments ever, because I love meeting new people. I love talking to people. I like learning new things. Now, I'm also someone who takes great delight in seeing others thrive. And, I've just mentioned EDI, especially people from disadvantaged backgrounds. So one of the things that I do is a lot of coaching and mentoring, and I've had some success with that. I've had, people who've moved on to director level posts, and, that gives me a sense of, I suppose really a sense of validation that, that I am making a difference somehow. In terms of some of the tangible outcomes around work that I've done, so, within the Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent system, we were the first pilot for the High Potential Scheme. And that was a leadership development programme, which was very much geared to developing the next generation of exec leaders. And the programme was different because its assessment was based on values and not just whether you've left university with a 1-1 degree or whether you've been on a course, etc. It was based on the person and their values and their behaviours, etc. And it's now a national programme. But that programme was very different. It was a first of its kind, in my opinion, because what it enabled us to do is it enabled us to find, potential people, not people that you knew about, but the people that would quite often be hidden in terms of developing those people over a 2-year programme. So, that was something that, I personally felt was necessary, especially for the public sector, because this is about ensuring that we are giving opportunities to workforce who would otherwise not be noticed. The other thing that was probably, I would say, was a notable success for me was that I was a senior responsible officer for the regional Be Well Midlands programme. So if I take us back to COVID, etc., one of the things, of course, that became evident very quickly was the impact on some of our diverse workforce. And, what this programme did very much was it was the whole of the East and the West Midlands, and I was the senior responsible officer, the SRO, as it were. And what it enabled us to do was look at, some of those workforce inequalities around how we could psychologically support the workforce. So that was, again, a fantastic programme, one of its kind, because it wasn't each organisation do its own thing. It was a programme that cut across the whole of the Midlands in terms of what can we do more so to address the fact that we do have workforce inequalities when it comes to providing health and well-being for our workforce. The other thing I would say is that within the Black Country system, we were recognised as the Integrated Care System of the Year by NHS England, their Midlands Diversity Award Scheme. And, I think that is testament to the fact that we were also one of the first systems to develop a system-wide EDI strategy.
Yes. With
6 pledges in it. And all of those pledges have CEO ownership, both from the NHS and the local authority. And so we are a go-getting system is how I describe it when it comes to EDI. We're full on, if I'm using my younger daughter's words, in terms of being very vocal and open about how we feel about, the wider diversity agenda. And it was great to be recognised, via an award for that. If I go to more recent successes, I've recently been appointed as the chair of the Healthcare Advisory Board with the Careers Enterprise Company. And the reason that's important to me is because I'm someone that's very passionate about supporting young people and their careers and helping them realise their full potential. So here's a fun fact. I started out on a YTS scheme, a youth training scheme.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Do you remember
that?
Do you remember that? So you can all work out how old I am now, can't you? And so, I'm not someone who, had the benefit of going to university, etc.
Yes.
And but to be honest with you, I think, in the world that we live in today, it is important to have that diversity in employment. And, I'm really, really passionate about supporting young people to help them, enter into careers and roles, because everybody learns a different way and everybody thrives in a different environment. And, we have to recognise that. And, the Black Country is the second most deprived system in England. So, this helps support our socio-economic growth as well when we look at supporting our younger population. So I'm a chair on that board. And what I would say in all of that is that, I work in a system that, does positive action programs. Now, I know there's many schools of thought on that.
Yes.
And, everybody can, think, everybody will have a view on that, I'm sure. But actually, my view is you can't just do one thing. You have to do many things. And, we're a system that, is very committed to, doing programs around BME workforce population. Especially in terms of getting them ready for more senior leadership roles. Yes. And you will know that. You've worked with us, Monique. But, there is something about recognising the fact that sometimes you need to take the learning from sectors such as the fire service and the police and look at, doing things differently to make sure that, you are growing your diverse leadership. So I am someone who will advocate positive action programmes as a means of helping us to achieve that. So those are some of my successes, and I suppose the other one is I'm a living example of retention in the NHS. So there you go.
25 years.
25 years.
But listening to what you were sharing there, I know because of how we know each other offline, but actually listening to you about that commitment to supporting young people to come into careers. The different routes that you can come in, values-based, understanding value-based talent, so looking at talent through the values-based lens, and then having those programs that can support and guide to bring people through. So just seeing that, just listening to you, and then talking about aspirant directors as well. So just seeing that whole pathway to actually supporting, identifying even, isn't it? Identifying and nurturing talent, and then those programs and those support initiatives to bring that talent through, and then being that leader of example. So what I was saying before, and then you as self leading authentically and using your influence, isn't it, to kind of ensure in your own ICB what's prioritized and what you're focusing on. But you said something in there. You said Black Country ICB is the second most deprived ICB in the country. We know, if anyone is following the recent news, you mentioned about, anti-DEI rhetoric at the moment. We know the NHS is really going through some difficult and challenging times as well. How does that sit for you being a CPO in the ICB? How do you prioritise when it feels like everything's a priority and you've got such a challenged system that you're working in?
So I suppose really there will always be change. And, you know, and that is very much how I look at things. And, you know, change will always feel challenging because it is. And within the NHS and the ICBs, and I'm sure you're cognizant of, you know, what's been happening, you know, with all the press, etc., you know, and, you know, one of the challenges we currently face, of course, is the timelines we have to work within. But what I would say is that, you know, in terms of my role, for example, the Chief People Officer, you know, for me, you know, it's really important that I do role model, but equally, I can't get swept away by distracting headlines. And I need to stay true to myself and my values. And my role, fundamentally, if you ask me, what does a Chief People Officer do? Chief People Officer is there to support and develop the workforce and make sure that, you know, we're engaging with the workforce. So, yes, it's challenging, but Monique, tell me when it hasn't been challenging. That is what I would say. When you're in the public sector, it will always be challenging. And we know that, you know, there will always be financial challenges as well. So, you know, I think it's really important to be, you know, very open with people. I think, you know, as someone who's been in the HR profession for a very, very long time, you know, we have policies, we have processes, but for me, it is always about putting people first. And I think that is the most important thing you can do. But if I clarify what I mean by that, it is about making sure that we treat people fairly and equitably. And how do you do that, you would ask yourself? Well, it is about keeping the lines of communication open. It is about people knowing they can come and talk to you. And it's about knowing that, you know, whatever question, query or concern they may have, that you are responding to that as openly as you possibly can. Where you have answers, you give answers. Where you don't, you say you don't, and you do your best to come back to them. And what I suppose I pride myself on is I always say that, you know, people will always remember how you treated them, how you spoke to them.
For sure.
How you listened to them. And, you know, we, you know, especially currently with all the challenges we face, we need to take the time to really listen to how people feel about the changes that we're going through. You know, people aren't going to remember the mechanics of a change process, but what they will remember is how they felt and how they were treated and how you spoke with them.
For sure.
And, you know, it is that very, very, what I would call, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a simple thing, but it's that, you know, it's the way we speak to people and how we approach people. Those are the very things that they will remember. And that is the thing that will assure them and make them feel as if they are being supported. So, you know, it's always about, you know, taking that shift from not being mechanistic in terms of how you do that, but having a flow, I would say, and people understanding that, you know, you are with them in terms of supporting that change. So, you know, change is a constant for all of us. Home, work, it's always there. But if we go back to leadership space, as leaders, you know, our responsibility first and foremost is always to make sure we're looking after the well-being of our staff. And it's to make sure that we're role modelling those values, those behaviours, and especially when we're, you know, going through some very challenging change processes. So, you know, I'm sorry I don't have anything more complex than that, but for me, it is about having having dialogue with people and not letting the process, you know, get carried away, because people, we're in the business of dealing with people, and we must always remember that as leaders.
I think, you know what, it's so, as you said, it's very easy to kind of say, you know, give me the complex answer. I think what I'm hearing from you here is let's not forget the fundamentals. You know, like if you are leading, if you're in a position of responsibility, even leading self through challenging times, I think it's your message would rings true, doesn't it? You know, how you speak to yourself, how you're looking after yourself, knowing that change is constant, and just circling back to what you shared at the beginning of our conversation, you know, on your own career, navigating when it was challenging. You spoke about coming back to your family values, what your parents taught you and instilled in you when it's been challenging for you. So it may be a simple message, but it's very profound actually, about don't forget to come back to that core space. Let's think about the how, not just the what, is what I'm taking from that. So if I ask you a kind of follow on from that, noting what you were saying about your commitment to EDI, your commitment to tackling inequalities, creating equity for others, what, in your opinion, bearing in mind where we are now in the NHS, where it is challenging, there's changes to workforce that were potentially unexpected, What do you think should be prioritised so that we do see more representation, like yourself, in key senior leadership roles?
So, there has been lots of work done in that space already, Monique. And the important thing is not to lose sight of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's always about building on that.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, we need to continue that journey of developing, our leadership cadre to be more diverse. But what I would say is I think our focus probably now in terms of next steps needs to be on our middle level leaders, creating that pipeline of the future. Because quite often what I'll hear people say is, well, we went out to advert, but we didn't get the level of candidates that we wanted to. So there is something about growing the future diverse leaders that we want, so that they're ready to apply for the roles when they come about.
Yes.
And so again, to use the words that it's not rocket science. This is about growing our future leaders to make sure we've got more inclusive leaders, more diverse leaders. So I think one of the things we need to do is perhaps put more energy into that middle level leadership.
Yes.
But having said that, I also think that when you're looking at entry-level careers into health and care, we also need to make sure that we have a talent approach that, cuts across all tiers of the workforce, because there is no such thing as, you can't grow your talent. You have to grow to a certain level. You've got to start straight from the outset in terms of how we do it. So, we've done all this work around execs. I think we've just got to go, in terms of the hierarchy that we have, go middle level, look at entry level, and look at how we start to push and bring people up through that level. So we do have that pool of people who are ready then to, be part of our boards, etc. So they are actually representing our communities. And the beauty of that, as we know, is that when you represent your communities at board level, you get that diversity of thought around decision making as well.
Absolutely. And so if I flip the coin on that and what you were saying there, if you were sort of sending, what would be the top tips you'd share with those who you said, you want to be ready now, those, the talent in the pipeline, our diverse talent in the pipeline, what tips would you share with them about progressing their careers into the boardroom?
So what I would say is someone who started their career in the 90s, where there was no talent management for me, where I didn't have mentors, where I didn't have coaches, where, quite frankly, people like me were often not seen because it was a tough gig back then. And I'm sure many people would say it's a tough gig now.
Yes.
But I suppose my advice would be is that, there is mentoring now. Make sure you get yourself a mentor, because mentors help you make those connections and help you, make considered decisions in terms of your career. Don't do the twisty, windy road that I did and get a flat tire and try and get someone to help you change it. Don't do that if you can help it.
Learn from it.
Yeah. Get yourself a coach, because it takes huge amounts of confidence.
Yes.
Especially if you, haven't had, we've all got scars, haven't we?
Yes.
I've got plenty of scars. But there is something about, coaching and helping that self-belief, because self-belief is, it's a really nice word, but actually getting there is a very different thing entirely. What I would say is, access all the programs that are available. People will say, what, another training program? I will say, do it, because you always learn something.
Yes.
And, find out what they are, be curious, get out there, find what's available, and do not wait. You see, what I would say is, I should have progressed my career much earlier, but, do not wait, step forward. That's probably one of the main lessons of my life. Don't wait for people to notice you, step forward, ask the questions, make it known that you're ambitious, make it known that you have drive, make it known that you're there and you want to do more.
Yes.
So, that is probably some of the more, what I would say, the state of readiness, I think, in terms of where you need to be. But honestly, Monique, my advice would be to just own the fact that you're different.
Yes.
Don't try and be what everyone else is. Don't do that.
I love that.
Be who you are.
I love that.
And, as a board member, yes, you need political acumen. You know, you need to understand the nuances. You will do that anyway. But just own the fact that you are different and be comfortable with that. because that's what makes you unique, and that's the, that's what will add value,
For sure.
to your role as a board member.
For sure.
And that's the difference that you'll bring to that table, and that's what will make you stand out. So, don't look for the complicated.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, because, irrespective of what you go through in life, your scars, your history, your experience, what that does is it enables you to look at things from a different lens. And, that can only be a good thing. But what it will also make you do is it will make you move further and faster, because it will give you that level of confidence that you otherwise would not have.
So, my goodness me, so powerful hearing that from you. Like, it's powerfully simple, but actually it's so true, isn't it? And thank you for giving our audience that reminder, like, you celebrate your difference, stand strong in it. Yes, have political nous, understand the way we do things around here, but actually just don't forget about who you are. We've had such a quick whistle-stop tour to speak to you today. Headlines, and you've given us our audience some real gems to take away. But if people want to hear more, if people want to connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
Well, please don't come knocking on my door. I've probably I don't use a lot of social media platforms anymore, because life is incredibly busy. I am on LinkedIn for professional reasons, so people can connect. I work at the NHS. I'm sure I'm not that hard to find, but generally I can be contacted through LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure we add your LinkedIn profile onto the show notes, and I'm sure from this conversation there will be colleagues who'll want to speak to you, and just those nuggets, like you said, you shared, the advice you gave, even if they don't reach out. I think today feels like it's been a real short and sharp mentoring session about how to navigate your career, how to use your challenges and what you've learned to fuel you. That's what I heard from what you shared today, how it fuels you. But also now, when it's challenging and it's deeply challenging, come back to your fundamentals. Remember who you are. Keep it simple. Think about how you're communicating with people, isn't it? And be open is what I feel like you were saying there. Yes, read the room. Yes, read the room, but actually be yourself. Be yourself in that. So you mentioned something in here. You were saying in talking about, you being SRO of, wellbeing and what was going on across the whole region, especially during the pandemic. So if I come back to you, as a busy woman, how do you look after you? What do you do to make sure you're prioritising your well-being?
So I'm someone who probably thrives on being busy. I don't do quiet very well.
Doesn't surprise me. Me.
I achieve more when I don't have a lot of time. But generally, I work out a lot. I do like physical exercise. I like to keep fit. I enjoy long walks. I'm an avid reader, Monique. I'm an obsessive fan of horror books. Let me tell you. I love post-apocalyptic zombie books and also vampire kind of stories. I have favourite authors, actually. The two that stand out for me are Nicholas Sansbury Smith, who wrote the Extinction Level zombie books, and also an author called K.R. Griffiths, who did a vampire trilogy around the Sundown series. So
I love this. Book recommendations
as well. So
this.
I absolutely love the horror genre. But just to assure the audience, I didn't read those stories to my children when they were small, so I'm really not a safeguarding risk. But generally, I find that being busy keeps me focused in terms of both my physical and my mental well-being. I do like listening to music. I am an 80s, 90s person. I will confess to still having a crush on John Taylor from Duran Duran.
So for people,
so for people who don't know who Duran Duran were, I have no idea what he looks like now. You do know that, don't you? But go and Google it. But for me, they were the best band ever. And I do think that they're even better now. But so I do like music. But what I would say is, as a person, I've always been the responsible one. And to balance this, I do have, we mentioned quirky. So I have a love for adventure. in my personal life. And an example of this is that I don't like being afraid, so I will always try and confront my fears, and I will always want to push boundaries. So this year, one of my friends suggested that when I'm in Dubai for my holidays, that I do a skydive over the palm. So that's what I will be doing.
Whoa. So, okay. Everyone's going to connect with you now on
so
socials
I'm all or
see
nothing.
more,
As a person, I'm all or nothing. So that's what I'll be looking at doing, because that will help me combat my fear of heights.
Okay.
If you don't see me again, Monique, something's gone wrong.
Yes.
So, but I suppose really my final words of advice to anyone would be that, whether it's your personal or your professional life, you can't always disassociate the two, can you?
Yeah.
You must never be afraid of making mistakes. They're an important part of helping you grow and develop, and they actually give you confidence because you've overcome things. If you spend the better part of your time trying to protect yourself from mistakes, it can actually have the absolute opposite effect in terms of you as a person. For those people that have my WhatsApp status, I've got a very, short profile on there. It says, just being you is your greatest strength, which is the best advice I can ever give to anyone, just being who you are. But for me, I suppose, because we've joked about me showing my age, so I'm going to go there for a minute. For me, life is about balance, and it's about embracing the fact that, none of us are perfect. There is imperfection, and, we're always evolving. Nobody is the finished article. I'm certainly not. So you need to own your journey. You need to understand that things won't always go according to plan, but that's okay. You can control that to some extent. If you don't get one job, guess what? There'll be other jobs that you can apply for. And there will be people who see you for what you are. And they will then give you that opportunity. So what I would say to people is there will always be ups and downs. That's life. It's just to stay true to yourself and, keep on evolving, because that's equally important. But just unapologetically remain who you are, because that's good enough. And that's all you need to be.
What a wonderful way to end the conversation today. And I think you absolutely epitomise what you were just sharing there, about being who you are, showing up as who you are. Although I had to prompt and probe you a little bit, owning what you've achieved as well. And just thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us when it is extremely busy. So I appreciate you giving us the time, and thank you for giving us some insights into what leading at the very top really feels like. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Monique.
You're welcome.
Thank you.